Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 54 for Monday, August 26th, 2019. My name is Joel Duggan, and joining me, as always, is my friend Jonny, although you may know him better as Pixel Riffs. Hello, sir.
Hello. Normally this would be a roundtable this episode. It's the last one of the month. We normally have guests on for these things, or we try to, but unfortunately today it is just the two of us. Schedules happen, people, and we've been trying to get a few people on the show occasionally, but for whatever reason things haven't really lined up. So apologies for that, but it looks like, judging by the show notes we've got in front of us, we've got a pretty action-packed show for you, so I'm excited to get into some of this stuff.
Me as well, and I believe, if I remember correctly, that August into September and Christmas are the two hardest times to book people on podcasts from my experience with Comics Coast to Coast, because that was had to have a guest every week, and it was always tough because it was the combination of family vacations and convention season for comic artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Christmas time, everybody's busy with family. And if they're not busy with family, they're traveling or shopping, or like there's just the to-do list is a mile long.
We're trying to backlog all of the work before they take a break. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Exactly. So that's usually the case. But hopefully we'll be able to swing in some new guests. And we have a little bit of a roundtable back and forth, I think, this week, too.
Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about. Let's start by talking about the usual stuff, what's going on in our Minecraft lives. Why don't you kick us off this week?
I built flying machines.
Hey!
I have built them live on stream.
Redstone flying machines, I assume, as opposed to just a plane.
Yes, no, I built the observer-based redstone flying machines. Confession, I built one off stream and made sure it worked before I built the other six. How many were there? 6 in total. So I built 5 on stream, and they worked on the third try, so so that's good. And I should say the flying machines always worked. It was the switches to turn them on and off that I would forget a piece or whatever.
Yeah, that timing stuff is difficult too. Like you've got to make sure that something just touches the observer once, which is actually really difficult for stuff with observers to do. So yeah,
I do find that troubling. Observers are a cool block, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around how flying machines work. I get that they work. I see the pattern and I understand how to make them now, but they're powering the air above a piston. And so so it's quasi connectivity, or I think that's what's happening.
Diagonal powering pistons is the thing.
Yeah. So that to me is strange. It would make more sense if there had to be a block above the piston. Like if you had to put a slime block above the piston or something for it to move, then that would make sense, right? But the other thing that I find interesting is how complicated the redstone looks for something like Nembon's Fortress Crossroads farm, which is what I'm building on the Citadel. I should say what I've built. All the redstone functionality is now in place, which is exciting. But I was really intimidated by how it looked, how it worked, the flying machines, all of it. And he doesn't really go for a block-by-block tutorial in his video. He explains how it works, but he doesn't show you how to build it. He just kind of offers the download, which is good and bad. It took a lot longer because instead of pausing a video, I had to constantly switch between one Minecraft world and the next.
Yeah.
Counting blocks and stuff like that. Took a lot of screenshots. But one thing that I did kind of learn is, despite how intimidating it was, I'm redstone savvy, but I couldn't design something like this. Like this is not something I could come up with on my own. And so I now know how to use flying machines so I could implement them in other farms. I also now know the theory behind how flying machine return mechanisms work. And really all you need is just an observer that sees the flying machine arrive and then just turn that signal around in a loop and send it back. And so that you have a receiving observer that then updates an observer that is on the flying machine. And you just have to make sure that you update the right one first. That's something I don't really know. It's like the first time I tried to launch a flying machine, I tried to update the wrong observer and it went the wrong way. And I was like, okay, so I guess I do the other one. But there are some ingenious ways in Nembon's build of how he sends observers on its way. An observer that then flicks a trapdoor.
Yeah.
An observer that powers an empty dropper. The dropper just clicks, but the observer sees the click and then is sent off. which I think is probably the tidiest, right? Because that's a single update. There's no flip of the trapdoor.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing that I noticed that was really cool? Oh, it's hard to explain, but the switch for the main sweepers, it's an observer on the end of a line of slime blocks. So not only does moving that observer into place initiate the flight sequence, but that observer in that position is also the bounce back signal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you turn it on and put the bounce back in place, but when you turn it off, you remove the bounce back and they always come to rest in the same position. Like, it's very, very clever. So I learned a lot. I did a ton of it on stream on the weekend. So if you're looking to see that built live and it kind of I explained how it works with some visuals, all designed by Nembon. And I mispronounced his name a number of times in the stream, by the way. But check it out, because I really had a lot of fun with it. I got super excited when it started to work. And now we have the long, arduous process of spawn proofing the nether for this farm to really work. But I have checked all the mechanics. The few mobs, like 2 zombie pigmen and a couple skeletons, they made it way to the very bottom. So everything sweeps and crushes, and not crushes, but sweeps and drops and pushes as it should, and I'm thrilled. It's super. Yeah. It's been super, super fun. I highly encourage people to find a redstone project that is well beyond your understanding and build it anyway. You will learn an absolute ton.
I'm going to have to do some of that myself soon, because I'm getting into the stages where I'm building slightly more complex farms, and the redstone stuff is something that I need to catch up with. And strangely, I know you said you had a bit of like trouble understanding quite how observers do what they do and like when to expect certain behavior and that kind of stuff. Observers are one of those blocks for me which actually make perfect sense, and I kind of they've if not necessarily, I can't quite explain how they work, but I know what to expect from them, and they've made redstone a little bit more palatable for me and easier. The problem I have with redstone most of the time is following tutorials and stuff like that. It's usually been refined and optimized, and like the design is so kind of stripped down from what they presumably started with. You start with like redstone wire tangled everywhere, and then you figure out like the most elegant looking redstone contraption after that, because you're trying to like minimize the amount of components you're using and that kind of stuff. Just kind of refine it down to the most compact thing it can be. Compacting redstone like that is really difficult for me, because I can't necessarily imagine how the circuit could be made more efficient. And I feel like the thing that intimidates me is seeing circuits that people like Mumbo and Ilmango and, you know, a lot of the technical people that you can pull out of the air, they have the most elegant looking contraptions, and then you almost can't see into them because it's so densely packed with components. The stuff I would love to learn to do is piston doors. And the kind of emphasis with piston door stuff is making stuff as compact as possible. You know, you've got a 3x3 door, it only uses a 5x5 footprint, it's super compact, you know, that kind of thing. That's the stuff I just can't work out on my own, which is frustrating, because one of my ethos for doing a lot of the stuff that I do in the Survival Guide series is just making sure that I understand every inch of it, and that usually means puzzling through it myself so that I can then explain it to my audience, instead of just building something someone else has built block for block and going, well, that's just how it works, because, like, not that I can't really offer an explanation for it. And I've had to do that a couple of times with bedrock breaking, because I have no idea how that works still. I can vaguely explain it. But there are definitely some things where I would love to be able to take people through a piston door design block for block and tell them why each of the components is there and how it does what it does. But I just can't seem to work that out on my own. I get into a creative test flat world, I place a couple of blocks, and then I just become redstone illiterate after that, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I really need to I need to crack on. I need to find some free time, really, just to spend like a whole day in a redstone lab kind of environment where I'm testing different things and figuring out quite how everything interacts with everything else.
I'm looking forward to doing like a custom version of the storage system. Like, I mean, I know what needs to happen for this farm, but I'm looking forward to, because I've done a number of storage systems before, so I'm looking forward to kind of tweaking it to make it my own. I also changed the design of this. I wanted it to look as cool as it could, so instead of leaf blocks, which are cheaper and easier to get but really ugly in the nether, the entire farm for immovable objects is furnaces and blast furnaces.
Nice.
Not the cheapest thing, but looks really mean and industrial and is all black and gray and metal and stuff like that. So that's really cool. Speaking of the confusing things about observers, I've come up with two things. One, I know why I find them cumbersome to place, and it's because all the other blocks that you put down that have a face or a front, when you put that block down, it faces you.
Yeah, and observers are the opposite.
Yeah, observers are the opposite. But now, and I kind of want to retexture my observers to look like a cat. I just think when you're looking at a cat, they ultimately always just like cat butt. Like you always end up with the meme online is like, cat butts are always in your face. And observers, they look like they have a cat butt. I will leave it at that. Apparently, once it is seen, it is not unseen. But I feel like texturing my observer to look like a cat would be hilarious.
Yeah, just giving it like the little ears and
a little like keep it metal, but maybe I'll make it look like a robot cat. I think that could be quite funny. And then the other thing that I am surprised that they don't do, and this is why I get confused with their actual signal output, is that when you put a signal into a block with most other redstone components, I hesitate to say all, but most, that block is then hard powered at like 15. And then the signal strength from that just diminishes the farther that you get away from it if you're running a redstone line. Observers, when they see something happen, they don't output a full strength. And I always get confused by that. So you always have to have like a repeater or a block with a repeater or something to then boost the signal out of an observer. And I always find it funny that they don't do like a strong power. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just don't know what it is.
I'm going to have to look that up now. I'm kind of curious about what they do output, because I've always assumed, maybe I didn't build like long enough redstone wire to figure out how long that is.
It's just one, and it's just one in the fact that it won't like affect anything. Like it's not long enough. Like if you put a torch on a block and have the output of an observer go into that block, it won't turn off the torch. It's not long enough. It's too short of a pulse to affect the torch. The torch doesn't update quick enough. It's weird. It's why I find it so funny. And this is why, because when you look at the design from like Nembon and you look at how many observers and repeaters and blocks, it's like, why is this so messy? And then you're like, oh, because the observers don't put out like a full signal. They have to have something to increase it. Once you've got it into a block, then you're laughing. Then you're just, repeaters and redstone line and you're fine. But it's that initial kind of like output that needs to happen off the get-go. But anyway, so that's what I've been doing in Minecraft. What's new with you?
I have been breeding villagers in 1.14.4, which using Impulse SV's breeder design that he put together from Logical Geek Boy and Raiseworks' carrot farm and villager breeding pod. So that's been great. I haven't got too many crops out of it yet because I think I need to be nearby the villagers so that their AI can actually let them move around and harvest the veggies. But they have been breeding. They have been breeding a whole bunch, and I really don't know what to do with any of the villagers yet because I want to make an area that is populated by villagers that isn't my central town. So if I come through a nether portal with bad omen, I don't, or kill a pillager captain there, I don't immediately start a raid. So I've been building an aqueduct that takes the villagers down from the villager breeder, which is on top of a mountain 100 blocks away, so that it doesn't mess with the rest of the villager stuff that's going to be in this town that I'm building there. And the aqueduct carries them down. And right now, it just drops them off the end of the aqueduct and, because I'm not a monster, into a pool of water, which has now become a villager mosh pit. There are so many guys in there. They're all just leaping up and down because they're in water, and that's how the water physics kind of interact with them. And I've positioned a couple of iron golems that were left over from me fixing my iron farm, and I've just put them nearby and said, vaguely guard these people, but I really don't mind if they get hit by zombies occasionally because the breeder is just going to be making more. Aside from that, I spent yesterday setting up a furnace-based XP farm. So now I have some zero-tick farms making bamboo and cactus buried in a mountainside that is now fueling a bunch of furnaces and basically being an instant repair station, the kind of thing that you might have seen Azuma building on Hermitcraft recently, except on a smaller scale because I'm just one man. And also, I think I still need to do a bit of balancing between the amount of fuel that's getting input and the amount of items that are getting input. At first, the cactus was really inefficient because it was just falling in places where it would stack up and not drop into the water streams. I swapped all the water streams out for hoppers and hopper minecarts, and now I have way too much cactus going through. But all of the cactus dye just gets destroyed by another cactus, ironically enough. So that's going to be providing XP for me if I want to have like a quick elytra repair or tool repair around my spawn area. I kind of wanted to do that. The main thing really is I'm trying my hardest not to move on to another build project yet. I have sort of sworn to myself that I'm going to finish this town, maybe so that I can provide a world download for people and give them something that actually feels finished, but also because I do this a lot. I tend to get bored of a project, or not necessarily bored, but I tend to realize that the only thing I have left to do on a project is not going to make very good video content, and so I will move to another area and just leave a bunch of my stuff unfinished. And I really don't like that unfinished feeling anymore, or at least, you know, if it's not going to be finished to my satisfaction, which I don't think it ever will be, at least finished to the extent that I would be happy to show people around and say, like, look at all these houses, instead of look at all these places where I intend to build houses but I have not yet. And so I really want to move on to the next thing, which I want to build a ski village in a snow biome, because nobody ever builds in snow biomes, and I think we could make it look really cool. But I don't want to move on from my current town project without it being done. So I'm wrestling with that right now and trying to find other stuff that I can do around this town before we move on to do something completely different and build in a different style, in a different biome with different blocks, and actually kind of change up the style of things a little bit. I might need a winter vacation though, just putting it out there.
Is the city building something that you can kind of do the design stuff for videos, you know, and content for videos, and then the grindy, not I'd say grindy, but like the fill in the gaps, like, okay, we know where all these houses are going to go. Here's a whole block or a whole street of just inconsequential, it's meant to look populated stuff that you could then just build on stream, and then tackle things like churches or town halls or something with more design and more importance on a video.
That's kind of what I've been doing. It's you know, I get maybe 2 or 3 houses done per stream now,
Nice.
but it's a large area that I'm building, and some of the houses, because I don't want to make it just like a bunch of square things on a grid, because it's meant to be a more kind of chaotic medieval kind of town. A few of the builds are a little bit more complex. They're angled builds, stuff I'm not necessarily used to building, so it's yeah, it's a little difficult to get all of that stuff done. And I've done a couple of the feature builds, what I'm thinking of them as, on videos. I've done the Alchemists Guild recently, which is kind of half built right now, but it was basically a test on how you can blast proof a concrete maker machine that uses TNT to explode stuff, because I was worried that anything I built around the outside was just going to get caught in this TNT explosion. So I was like, hey, let's make walls of water around the outside of this and then build a structure around it. And so I can do elements like that for time lapses in the videos, but ultimately I can only tell people how to build a house so many times before they kind of go, we know, like move on to something that feels a bit more like a new tutorial. So it's difficult with it being more of a tutorial series and like having elements of a Let's Play series, in that I waffle for 20 minutes per episode, but is still meant to be teaching people something new with each episode, and there's only so many ways I can teach people to build a house.
Yeah.
At this point.
Have you tackled interiors at all?
I've done bits of interior here and there, but interiors are also one of those things that I don't want to do right now, because it interrupts the flow of me building all the exteriors.
Right.
And like the exteriors are the most important thing. I want it to look like a town when I fly over it, as opposed to it being something that I need to sort of go in and do all the detail and stuff for.
I know that feeling. The Nether hub on the Citadel is very much the central portal and the adjoining, I say rooms, 2 of the adjoining 4 rooms are done and feel adequate. A couple of those hallways are also finished. But then as soon as you get 50 blocks away, it's cobblestone streets, you know, and wide open nether with gas shooting at you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's functional, but it is by no means fashionable. And all the back and forth that I've had to do to like smelt stuff and collect more items, and like furnaces take a lot of cobble. When you're building this many of them, boy, do they take a lot of cobble. And so I noticed like that flying back and forth, I started to just like turn my nose. It's like, I still have like netherrack walls in these tunnels. And like some of it's like, this is 2 years old now. Like some of it was like, I remember building this when we first started.
Yeah.
So I need to, I think It's not going to be soon because we've been spending an awful lot of time in the end and in the Nether, and I crave sunshine in Minecraft now. So it's not going to be right now, but fixing up these flyover bits, these transitional areas that you don't necessarily spend a lot of time in, but you spend a lot of time going through, I think is important. Because I find too that, and you might find this as well, pausing to not fly and walk, or just finding an area that you can walk through that's attractive, it's great for video content because then you can like talk about something either related or not, but it gives a really interesting visual as opposed to just walking by garbage.
Yeah.
I find that cumbersome. But
Definitely.
Moving on to the news, we thought we were going to have some slow news weeks rolling into the Minecon Live later in September. However, Minecraft has released a snapshot. Minecraft 1.15 snapshot 19W43A was put out last week, and Minecraft has added bees. They've added
bees.gif. Everybody posting Nicolas Cage and Oprah gifs on Twitter. It's the best.
Yeah. There are bees, there are bee nests and bee hives. There are honeycombs. You can get honey in jars. There has been some added dispenser functionality, which we'll touch on in just a minute. Minecraft Java Edition now requires OpenGL 2.0. New function loot tables called copy_state, and a number of bugs have been fixed. The full list of bugs and everything important is going to be on Minecraft.net. We will have that linked in the show notes. But the first bugs that I think are most important to note are that ghost blocks have been kicked in the butt once again. This refers to MC 156852. That is being fixed. And something we brought up last week, I think in response to an email, MC 157136, villagers restocking is not properly tracked. So get it while the getting is good, folks, because your villagers in 1.15 are going to be back to only restocking their trades twice a day.
Absolutely. We still have no idea when 1.15 is going to come out. This is just the preliminary snapshot, and I'm really surprised that we're getting any kind of content before Minecon. I was expecting them to hold everything back, but apparently they've released the bees a little early, and I'm quite happy about that fact.
I am too, and I think what it might indicate, and this is pure speculation, is that 1.15 will not be coming so long after Minecon as 1.14 and 1 did. I think we'll end up with, hey, here's all the cool stuff coming in 1.15 announced at Minecon, and here's our projected launch date. You know, like it's going to be a lot sooner than people think. Not just like we're not going to talk about it. It's going to happen when it happens. I feel like if they're releasing stuff ahead of Minecon Live, then it may point to the fact that it's coming sooner than we think. I also think that they want to keep any kind of Minecraft 1.15 updates separate from the release of Dungeons, which is coming in 2020. I don't think they want to overlap those.
Yeah, that would make sense, and prevent them from overcomplicating the messaging and just having to be like, remember, this is in this version and this is in that version. I think we're already seeing a little bit of confusion between, you know, the Minecraft Earth mobs and like, when are we going to get the, you know, yellow mushrooms in the games and muddy pigs and that kind of stuff? And they're like, well, we don't know if we're actually going to do that or not. But potentially looking at this as a, you know, they're adding bees to Minecraft, they're adding all of these new mobs in Minecraft Earth. I kind of wonder if the next update is going to be a little bit more focused on nature and the natural world. So we'll talk more about this in the main discussion because we have a lot of thoughts about bees. There's a couple of other things that we wanted to cover here, though, that weren't covered in the changelog, because some people have been doing some digging, and there are a couple of unused items and unused textures in the snapshot. We've got a link in the show notes to Azuma's video covering the snapshot, in which he points out that people found a wax block and some crystallized honey items, which the wax block kind of looks like you would expect it to look, I guess. It's kind of like a yellowy, sort of almost like glazed terracotta might do, but with more of a kind of, I guess, polished-looking vibe to it, kind of yellow and white. And crystallized honey is, you know, like it looks like a honey that's just been poured out of a honey pot from a spoon or something like that. And neither of them have any use yet. They are unused completely, and they're not available in the creative inventory or through any of the interactions with the new bees. But there is potentially a hint that they are going to be available to the player in future. So maybe Mojang isn't done with bees yet, which is pretty good news, because while obviously it's cool to have some new stuff to play around with, and people have already been making bee-related farms and stuff like that in the Snapshot, then it's good to know that they've potentially got more depth than that.
And speaking of Minecraft Dungeons, you picked up a couple of really cool videos about gameplay.
Yes, so Minecraft Dungeons has been on demo at Gamescom, which is happening over in, I believe, Germany or Belgium or somewhere in mainland Europe anyway. And there is a playable demo there that people can play for, I think, 20 minutes. It's like a timed demo kind of thing. And in fact, somebody from the Spawn Chunks Discord has actually been over at Gamescom and got to play. So we'd love to hear a few thoughts on that if you want to send us an email. But yeah, we have an IGN video and a video by a YouTuber by the name of CPK. Both of those are linked in the show notes as well. And the Dungeons video has no commentary, just gameplay, but is significant in terms of having multiplayer action in it. I believe that the IGN representative was probably just like playing through casually, and then the developer who's kind of helping people through the demo and telling them what the controls do and stuff like that just jumps in. And I feel like multiplayer absolutely 100% is going to improve the experience of this game from what I've seen, because it just gets so much more fun looking when there's multiple people on screen doing stuff for me than it is just like a lone adventurer going through it hacking and slashing. CPK's video is great though, because he plays the same demo but with commentary, so they're all playing the same level, but he's going over the controls and what some of the UI does and kind of explaining things and mentioning some stuff that the developers told him. So it's a lot better for a look at exactly how the game is going to be played, rather than the IGN video, which is just, it has no commentary, it's just gameplay. So that one's good for an overall sort of vibe of how the game is going to look, but CPK is talking about how it's actually played and what each of the buttons does and that kind of stuff. So that's super cool, and I really like the look of it.
Yeah, me too. It looks like a ton of fun. It's got this cool kind of like atmospheric vibe, like you feel like you're in a tomb, but then it's also really cartoony, and like the coins and the emeralds that you're collecting, they glow and they spin. Like it has like this kind of mesh between like a Nintendo Mario experience and a Diablo experience. Right?
It's very Diablo, yeah.
Yeah. Like it definitely Diablo in the way that it's a dungeon crawler, but I feel like they've nailed that cartoony but still impactful vibe. Like for me, the thing that stood out was the sound design, because it's just so much more robust than the sounds that you get in Minecraft currently. And the sounds are a little cartoony, but visceral and like rock'em sock'em, like fast paced. Like they're playing with, I think it's like a two-handed sword, so it's like a paladin type weapon. And when they swing, like not the average hit, but like the big swing, the big power up swing, like it's got some weight behind it, and the mobs go flying, and because of the animation on the mobs, when they die, they don't just fall over like a stick. They actually, their limbs flail and they kind of land funny, and so they land on the ground and they twist in different places. And
there was a great bit in CPK's video where he shoots an arrow at a husk, and he points out that the husk actually gets stuck to the wall by it. Like he's dealt the killing blow to this thing, and it just kind of gets hung there for a bit until it eventually, evaporates.
They kind of sink into the ground, yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I'm finding most noticeable about the sound design, though, is that the mob sounds are all the mob sounds that we're used to in Minecraft. Like when you're hearing like a spider kind of screeching and doing that kind of horrible little hissing sound that they make, it is just the noise lifted straight out of Minecraft, which obviously creates that familiarity. But I feel like the other sound design is so like layered and sort of practiced, and I don't want to say professional sounding, but considering that the original sounds were probably all done by Notch back in the day, I think it feels... Sorry, there's a motorbike going past. It feels like those sounds almost seem out of place. They're definitely going to be familiar to people, but there is more like care and attention and refinement put into some of the newer sounds, the stuff that they've actually had to produce originally for dungeons, than there is for the sound of a skeleton's bones clanking, which is just like the way you'd hear it in the core Minecraft game.
And I would be okay if they brought some of that stuff back over to Minecraft, because that's the kind of thing that I would imagine could be translated fairly easily. I don't want to speak out of turn, but graphics and designs and mobs, those are hard things to add to Minecraft. but changing a sound to something that's a better sound, a newly recorded sound, something that has more layer and depth, I feel should be easier than graphic updates. A really good example is the new sounds for crop planting and netherwort farming. They're great.
They're so good. They're
so
really,
good.
really good.
Yeah, I don't miss the old ones.
I like them so much better than the grass breaking noise that they were using every time. It's so much more pleasant sounding too.
Agreed.
And that kind of soothing noise where it's a repetitive action as well. It's something you're going to be doing quite a lot of, so it makes sense to have it be slightly more pleasing to the ear. And yeah, I really think that they could go in and sort of remaster the sound a little bit. And I don't want to, tell them how to do anything, of course, because they've got like a full sound team, and the sound team has been killing it lately. Some of the stuff that they've been doing for we've talked about how we like the noises that the drowned and the pillagers make, that kind of whenever you hit a pillager and it goes blah, that's still super cool. But I wonder if maybe some of that stuff could be remastered and retouched without losing what it currently has. That kind of the iconic Minecraft sounds, I guess, because some of that stuff has changed over the years anyway. So maybe it could happen. But anyway,
some of the mobs and some of the bosses, they look like evokers on steroids. Like the necromancers that can raise the dead, and they have an area of effect like blue fire attack. And oh man, there is a lot going on screen. It's almost a sensory overload. I watched both of these videos pre-show. And then something happened. I don't know whether you messaged me or I had to do something with the show notes. So I paused the video, and I was immediately made aware of how silent my room was.
Yeah.
After spending 10 minutes watching this hack and slash firework arrow mayhem happen on screen. It looks really fun. They're appealing to a broad gamer base. I think it's something that I'm really looking forward to giving a try when it comes out. There were a few things that I noticed in some of the gameplay that hopefully will get tightened up. I noticed that when items are dropped, you really kind of have to walk over them. You don't just go near them and they kind of magnet to you. You really kind of have to walk over all of them. There's a lot of times where the player character is spinning in little circles trying to collect everything. And in a 10-minute video, I was even watching this is getting old. So I would imagine playing it would be a little bit trickier if you really have to do that all the time. That could be a little bit cumbersome. When you made the comment about the multiplayer happening and that kind of stuff evolving, did you notice if the bad guys got more numerous, if there was more mobs?
Scales?
Yeah. Do you notice if it scaled? I didn't notice.
It probably happens very organically if it happens at all. So
right.
I can't say I really noticed the enemies just multiplying or spawning more. But it could be happening subtly in the background. It could be that maybe you have to, if you're calling in a friend because things are a little bit difficult, it gives you a bit of a grace period of okay, your friend is here to help you hack through the rest of these because you're they're overwhelming you or whatever. It doesn't want to immediately spawn a whole bunch more because then it just makes the problem worse. So it might be that they have a little bit of kind of scalable difficulty going on depending on how one player is doing over the other. But it's looking good. I think Dungeons is going to have a lot more depth than I was expecting at first. The action still seems like it's going to suit casual players as well, but the sheer amount of items and stuff, and there's stats for different things, and there's levels, and it seems like there's a lot more depth going on there that is exciting to me, because one thing I really didn't want it to be is a shallow kind of one and done experience. I like there to be a whole variety of stuff you can do in there. So hopefully we'll see a bit more of that coming soon.
And with the content being dungeons or these kind of maps and missions, DLC becomes a real possibility. So if
easily expandable.
Easily expandable, new items, new levels, all that kind of stuff. Worth noting too, if you're watching this and you're kind of well, this looks really kind of like this player's owning face. Take a close look. They're at level 27. And they've got some pretty awesome gear. I think the idea was that they didn't want people playing the demo to struggle. They wanted to kind of have the gameplay feel there, but not necessarily the day one difficulty. Which I think is worth noting, because I was at first that boss fight did not seem like it was really all that great, but then I was well, okay, wait a minute, this guy is walking around with a ton of gear and stuff on. So if you were playing day one, then that might not have been so easy. Something I really liked about the Enderman is that they've kept the straight arm, straight leg animation, but they've added more attacks. And I don't know what the dance moves is that people like. They keep their arms straight and they kind of shift them in front of and behind their body. But the Endermen essentially do that with one arm when they hit you. It's like a straight arm uppercut, but it's almost like a slap. It's almost like
they
it's
attack
really
like
funny.
the way the iron golems do, with the kind of two-handed swing upwards. Sometimes,
Yeah,
they
there's an
seem to do
overhand
that.
swing, but there's a one hand like sweep attack that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
looks like it's kind of like a slap, and it looks so like get out of here, like be
yeah,
gone. And I
yeah.
found that very very funny. There's a lot of little touches like that. I felt that the player animations were a little bit stiff. You have all of these heavy armor pieces and swords and stuff on you, and when you're running, the only thing moving is your legs. Your upper body
Yeah.
doesn't jostle at all, and I found that it felt very like mobile game simple, and I kind of wanted a little bit more weight. Like whenever you're taking a step, I kind of wanted more oomph. Because it makes you feel more powerful. Like it makes you feel like you have more presence in the world. It felt a little bit floaty, but again, like this may not be 100% finished. It's just playable demos, stuff like that. All that kind of stuff could be. Those are the kind of things that you fine tune at the end, not necessarily things that you lead with. I'm sure there are a ton of balancing issues with this game that they're probably
Yeah.
working on.
But for all of that, it still looks like a pretty refined experience already, just judging from the visual style of everything. The
Oh yeah.
environments are gorgeous.
Oh.
Just seeing a bit more of one environment instead of an overview of several different environments was really great. Kind of like the amount of detail they put into this stuff, and some of it is stuff that like makes me jealous that we don't have it in Minecraft, which was always going to be the case.
Yes.
But like, yeah, just seeing all of the bushes and stuff, the different like plant life they have in there to make it look like a deserty kind of environment. There's like rocks and stuff that make up this tomb that just don't look like any blocks that we already have without a significant retexture, I guess. But yeah, no, it looks like it's going to be a ton of fun and available on a whole bunch of platforms as well. So basically everybody will be able to get their hands on this when it comes out. And I hope they are going to have an open beta for it at some point still. I think they said they were going to release a beta, but I might be confusing that with Minecraft Earth. I don't know for certain. They've been quieter about that, I think, than they have about Minecraft Earth lately, because that's kind of the new thing, and probably something that it's easier to get out to YouTube people for Minecraft Earth to be demoed by people walking around in the street rather than it having to be a closed system like the Dungeons game is.
Yeah, if Mojang wants to send the spawn chunks beta access, we will be glad to test it out. One question before we move on: are you thinking mouse click to move or controller for playing dungeons?
Personally, I would go with controller. I don't think the UI doesn't look as like loaded up as something like an MMO where you've got to have a bunch of stuff assigned to number keys, or even like regular Minecraft is with number keys being on the hotbar slots and stuff. I think it is going to be a matter of you've got 3 different items which are assigned to 3 different controller buttons. And I think it'll be possible to have a keyboard and mouse control scheme for people who prefer stuff like that. But when it comes back to games like that, I played a few sort of hack and slash type things like Bastion and Transistor, both of which by Supergiant Games. Really great games. Very much controller games for me. If it feels like action-oriented, arcadey kind of gameplay, I need to have a controller for that kind of stuff, typically.
Interesting. I'm probably going to go, or at least start, pardon me, with mouse, because that's how I played Diablo.
Yeah,
And
if it's something that you're more used to as a genre, then yeah, I expect it.
And it depends on how the aiming works. And I mean, if it's a point your character in this particular direction, then it might be better with a controller. Whereas if it's click on the enemy and the character will attack that enemy, then that might be better for mouse. Like, I mean, and that might change based on what your control scheme is. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it is. Because I remember in one of the videos they were talking about the bow and arrow. Like, if you don't aim the bow and arrow in the right direction, it will miss the mob. And in Diablo, it was the same way with the sorceress, I think. You would basically hit the cast button and it would give you like an icon, like, your thing is going to go in this direction. And then you would have to drag it over the area that you want it to go, and then your sorcerer would just like destroy a bunch of stuff. And so that if that's how it works, then it should be fine. But if not, then it might be better for a controller. But I'd be open to trying both. But I would probably, because I don't have a controller for my PC, I'm more than likely to stick with the mouse at first and then try the controller later.
Yeah, it's something to test out, I suppose. One final thing before we move on from the news and really get stuck into talking about bees. I had an "and finally" kind of thing. You know where, like, at the news, they'll always have that, like, one thing that they send you away with, the sort of, "and finally, here's a dog that's been skateboarding around this neighborhood causing chaos," you know? I have one of those, and that is that Quinn Richter, who is the head of the Minecraft Partner Program, he's Quinn Richter on Twitter, actually threw the opening pitch of Sunday's Seattle Mariners baseball game in a Minecraft zombie costume. And I mean like a full, like, enormous, square, boxy, really well-built looking zombie costume, and with the square arms and everything. And so he threw the ball with like an air cannon. like at a batting cage or something like that. And this link will be in the show notes for this. It's super cool. There's like a few different shots of him with the mascot for the Mariners, and Seattle obviously being where the Microsoft campus is based. And this guy is the guy who the partner program is the stuff that it's basically like liaising with all of the marketplace creators, people who make texture packs and maps for Bedrock Edition and that kind of stuff, and presumably have some contact with the Java team as well. But yeah, they're all based up in Washington State, and so yeah, being at the Mariners game and seeing this guy dressed as a Minecraft zombie must have been pretty fun for any of the kids who were there, and I imagine a bunch of them probably interested in Minecraft, and seeing a zombie throw the ceremonial first pitch is really quite funny.
Yeah, that I saw the footage there. It was funny. It looked hilarious. It's funny how it becomes very apparent how things move with no knees.
Yeah, yes. Just like stiff legs walking out there. Yeah, super fun.
Well, moving into the roundtable discussion, we've got a couple of topics this week. Obviously, we're going to kick it off with to be or not to be. I decided to grab this one this week because I actually had quite a few thoughts when the bees first came out. I want to quickly also squash a lot of comments that I've seen. I made one snarkily to Pixel Riffs in a DM talking about like bees, the one thing that no one asked for. I think it's very important to note that this is a very early snapshot and that things added to the game are good. It doesn't matter if it's not what you want. The 115 is not the bee update.
Yes.
This is not the be all end all. There may be a lot more.
Imagine them like releasing this and then everyone scrambling and being like, wait, what are we going to tell them at Minecon now they know about bees? Like, no, there's clearly going to be so much more stuff.
Much more. I would argue that bees are probably just the first thing to get done to a point where they can share it with people, and that's why they've led with bees, and that would be it. I'm sure there's a lot more coming, so I want to caution everyone to be thoughtful when commenting about bees. But I'm going to start with the pros. First of which is that they look like tiny buses. And I use the word tiny, relatively speaking, because in Minecraft, in a 1 meter wide block, these bees are roughly a foot long.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
Yeah, we heard one go by Pixel's studio just a few minutes ago. Like this, they are perfect for Minecraft. Like when I thought they've added bees, my initial worry was like, oh man, I really hope it's not like a block of swarming pixels. Like I don't want
like
it to
a little
look
particle effect.
I didn't want it to be a particle effect. And no sooner did I say that, you sent me a DM with a photo of one of them. I was like, okay, yep,
yeah,
that's exactly what I expected it to look like.
And the caption 1.15, the Wicker Man update.
Yes. Yeah. And now, thankfully, they're not wall-eyed like sheep. I find sheep very derpy, and these are much cuter. They have little blue eyes, which I think is cool. There's something about, I think the blue eyes are like a little, I don't know if it's intentional, but it's a nod to Bumblebee, the Transformer. He's got blue eyes.
It could be.
Yeah, which I thought was really cool. But I love the textures. I love the way that they look. So I'm not going to, spend too much time on that. They're very Minecrafty. They fit very, very well. They don't feel like a stretch at all. I think they're a great ambient mob. I think they add a lot of atmosphere, both visually and acoustically. From an education standpoint, I think it's really useful and important, and to have bees in a healthy ecosystem, and the game mechanics and how bees are treated and how treating bees affect climate change in the real world. Like it's really synchronized. Like it makes your crops grow better. It's, if you mess with the bees, they get angry. Like there's all these different things. If you get stung by a bee, it dies, and it's very sad, and it doesn't drop anything in the game. So like there's all these different things that kind of point to like use bees, don't fight bees.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really cool. I've already mentioned how cute they are. Something that I noticed too, that a beehive, while serving the same function as a nest, could easily be used for shelving and filing cabinets and builds.
Yes.
The design of them is really cool.
One of the first things I did was like stick it on a shelf, like a dark oak trapdoor kind of shelf, and there's like, this looks exactly like one of those storage boxes you get in those kind of like modular storage shelf systems, the kind of thing that you get at IKEA. It's like a little basket that goes in a bookshelf. Perfect. And yeah, I love the fact that they've got a design that can be used in such a diverse way. That interpretive texture is so key to how a lot of people build detail into stuff in Minecraft. And while the bee nest itself, I'm always going to say beehive instead of bee nest because I just automatically call them that. But, the bee nest is obviously very much what it is. Like, you can't really disguise the fact that that's clearly a bee nest. But the hive box itself is a very versatile texture as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the top of it also works really cool for like an alternate flooring texture.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I thought was cool. And I liked I giggled when the eyes turn red, when the bees get mad, that they had the red eyes from the wolf.
The killer bees.
Yeah, very, very clever. I thought it was really, really cool. Now, to present some of the things that I think are maybe missing, I don't want to say bad, because, of course, I mean, this is all surface level speculation. We don't know what the full release is going to look like. The bees are probably going to change a lot over the next little while. I'm sure like the AI pathing and all that kind of stuff is going to change over time. However, I did find that honey just giving you sugar seems like a really missed opportunity. It felt like, wow, these are really cool, and they're not useful at all. And there is function to them, and it's cool in terms of like how bees get honey, how you get honey from the hive, how you can use dispensers now with the bottles. And like, there's all these cool things. And then right up to the very end, and the only thing that honey gives you is sugar, which you can get faster and earlier in another way. So the end game here is not that interesting to me. So what I thought was, a little while ago, there was a custom snapshot, I think. I know Mumbo played around with it in one of his videos about colored slime blocks.
And like someone had made a data pack. I think Seth Bling may even have made a data pack using
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, what if honey could be made into honey blocks that were sticky, like a slime block, or maybe with different properties? Maybe they stick to different things, What if honeycombs could be made into sticky slabs? We've heard from the technical community that, excuse me, that sticky slabs would be very, very useful. This would be a creative and colorful way to do that. They would be yellow instead of green. Easily discern in a build, have different functionality, not easy to get because it takes a long time for bees to collect pollen and turn it into honey. You have to get the bee hive or bee nest to level 5 before you get one bottle. So you'd have to do that 9 times, to get a honeycomb. No, you'd have to do that once to get one honeycomb, and then you'd have to get 3 honeycombs, and then I'm not sure how many honeycombs you need to make a sticky slab, a honeycomb slab. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing, but there just seems to be other uses. Now, we don't know with the wax texture that was found and the crystallized honey. Crystallized honey looks more like an item. It looks like something you might put in like a potion brew, or might be an ingredient for something else.
Yeah.
But honey itself, what if you could place honey like you put down redstone? We've all seen Winnie the Pooh.
Just a trail of honey.
He uses honey to fix stuff. Like, why not make honey a sticky surface? Like, you could make fly traps in Minecraft by putting honey on the ground, honey on the side of things. Maybe it slows mobs down. Maybe it sticks mobs to the ground at some point. The implications for like mob traps and fun kind of like game mechanics could be really, really cool.
Yeah. My counter argument to that would be that we already have stuff like that in the form of soul sand and cobwebs, and I think they're probably trying not to add too many redundant features So I like the idea, and I think it's a creative use of something that really doesn't have a great deal of use right now. And, to counter my counter argument, it's a redundant feature in the fact that it only gives you sugar.
Exactly,
But,
right?
yeah, I feel like there should be some other use for honey. Like you say, that some kind of functionality that it could be given. My thought initially was maybe you could have something akin to the way bees work in real life, because they're clearly quite keen on, committing to that, if not visually, then at least in terms of their behavior. Having different flowers, which they already interact with a whole bunch of flowers, change the effect or whatever like type of the honey. Change some property of the honey, because you have like orange blossom honey and acacia honey and just wild honey with no kind of floral input, and it changes the taste. And I thought initially that could sort of be like suspicious stew, and that honey from specific flowers could end up giving you a potion effect, but would be a different way of doing that beyond like feeding a brown mushroom a thing, because brown mushrooms are quite difficult to access because they're so rare. But then again, that would just be providing another suspicious stew, which is already a feature a lot of players have said doesn't really suit their style of gameplay and is not really that useful. So I don't really think adding another thing that gives you a small amount of potion effects would really be that good. But I want them to go in that direction with the honey and have something that will surprise us in the way that you can have the bees interact with flowers. That sort of makes sense to me and would be quite clever.
Adding crystallized honey to suspicious stew to lengthen the potion effect, perhaps.
Maybe.
Because that seems to be what people complain about, right? Like 2 seconds or 3 seconds of this effect is not really worth the trouble. Whereas, if you can do it with potions, then that would be really cool. I mean, there's obviously some open-ended possibilities, so I'm curious to see where they go. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention about. Oh yeah, the wax block. This was not me. I don't remember who it was in our Discord, but it was one of the clever people in our Spawn Chunks Discord mentioned candles, combining string and wax to make a new light source in the game that could potentially operate similar to a sea pickle, but on dry land. So place 1, 2, 3, or 4 candles, and you get different levels of light output, which I thought would be brilliant.
Very good. Very good for medieval builds, yeah.
And then creates a very cool use for the bees that's not just giving you sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting. So we don't know yet what we're gonna see. I noticed we linked, and we will have the link to Exumavoid's video in the show notes, but there was another video that I saw. I don't remember who it was, but when they arranged the wax block that they found, there's this texture, check it out. It wasn't in just a short stack. They actually did like a solid 9 or 12 by, a 6x6 wall of it. And it really does look like waxy walls. Like if you took a cartoon from the 80s and you were inside of a beehive, this texture is what that cartoon portrayed as the inside of a beehive. And so it could have some really interesting qualities. I'm not sure what you could use it for, but it has that weird kind of like alien drippy look to it, and it could be really fun. I'm not exactly sure what context you could use it in, but it could be. I'm thinking about like maybe something that's overflowing, like something that's got a build that's a big vat that's got stuff dripping down the side. It has the same sort of like gooey texture that netherrack does, but it's not as gross. So I'm curious about where that might go. But my initial thought with the wax was like, ooh, candles. That would be really, really, really cool too.
Yeah, it'd definitely be an interesting way to take it for sure, and encourage people to make productive use of the bees, and that gives them the reward of a sort of more decorative item, but also a functional item with it being a light source.
I mean, there's a few other things, but they get into like nitpicky territory. So I want to kind of steer this kind of debate into something you mentioned a little bit earlier, and that is we've got the bee, but what does that potentially say about what's coming in 1.15, potentially with more passive mobs? And you and I have spoken on the podcast before about things like birds and butterflies and unique kind of mobs. I sort of feel like it's going in that direction, and I don't know why. I don't know whether it's just what people are saying online that's influencing my thought process or whatever, but I do sort of feel like adding the bee opens things up to specifically other flying mobs. And I really, now that I've seen a bee and how Mojang has handled it, I really want them to do a bird. Like imagine a little blue bird, they've done parrots, but like imagine a little chubby like bluebird flying around or sparrow or something like that. That would be really, really cool. And I think that they could potentially do that. I don't know what use they would have. That's the one. That's where I'm stuck. Like I'm not sure what you get from a sparrow.
I think that might be their stumbling block here. They're kind of responding to criticisms that say parrots aren't really all that useful. They don't do all that much. There were a couple of updates where like parrots and polar bears got added, and they were like not really all that. Yeah, they didn't really feel like additive in terms of gameplay mechanics or anything like that. And I think they might be steering away from that. And I think that's what they've really like. They've settled on bees, and bees are great because they're an animal that we have domesticated in real life, kind of, which weren't already similar to an existing Minecraft mob. Like, you know, if you wanted to add, say, goats, because people domesticate goats, sure, what makes goats different to sheep, though? You know, whereas bees, there's just nothing really like them in terms of they've got that swarm mentality that, sure, that works with like zombie pigmen and wolves and that kind of thing. And they've got elements of stuff that already fits with existing Minecraft mechanics, but they are like you said, a very unique type of mob, something that's flying. I really like the way they move when they fly as well. The flying AI that they've done for them is sort of a middle ground between something like bats, which is just purely chaotic, and then something like phantoms, where their movements feel very controlled and predictable and slow, and they've got this natural kind of flutter to them which just works out really well for me. So I think they've really knocked it out of the park with bees. The only real criticism I've seen from the community is that people think they're too big, and I'm like, have you seen the size of spiders? They've you're worried about bees when you've got a spider that's 2 meters long and is attacking you. Like, shut up.
Really though.
Like, and like, how are you supposed to hit these bees with a sword? Not that you're really supposed to ultimately, but yeah, like I do think that people are losing perspective quite literally. If they're worried about the size of the bees compared to the size of like silverfish and endermites, for example.
Silverfish are 1.5 feet long.
yeah, that's nuts. I don't want. If I see one of those in my house, I'm moving to a different country. But but I think there could be something leading towards more passive mobs. Like we said earlier, it could be potentially an update that focuses more on nature. I immediately tweeted on the day, what if bees meant bears? You mentioned Winnie the Pooh earlier as well. I'm like, what if we end up getting bears that maybe go after the bee nests looking for that honey? And while, again, bears might not necessarily present such a useful thing for the player, we've already got pandas, we've already got polar bears. People have been asking for like grizzlies and stuff for a while, or maybe brown bears or something a little bit smaller.
Foxes don't do much for the player either.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a chance for them to add stuff like that, you know, wandering around in the occasional forest, maybe presenting a little bit of a challenge if they're kind of hostile, but then you've got to make sure that doesn't impact early gameplay with people immediately going to a forest for trees and getting mauled by a bear. So, I feel like passive mobs could potentially be a little bit more of a direction here. I'm not sure really what else I would add that didn't provide some kind of potion effect. I mean, you potentially have stuff like frogs providing potion effects. I don't know. It gets into dangerous territory at that point.
All the small ambient mobs that would be akin to what we're experiencing visually with the bees, they don't really add much to the game unless they are completely made up, like a flying turnip. You know, like just it's a vegetable that has a helicopter leaf top and just, you know, like, I would be down for that. Like, bring it on. Like, if you are stuck with why you can't add a bird, make something up, because
make a flying turnip, make a fire elephant,
because I don't particularly think the Phantom AI is very good, but the ambience that they add with the shriek and the fact that they hit like a truck, you know, if you're not wearing a chest plate, like, they add a lot to the game. Adding that flying mob that's completely made up, not an existing, you know, animal, really kind of, it felt very Minecraft, but it also just creates this new thing. And to have something that's Minecrafty, even though I know that we've kind of established in the past on the show that the trend seems to be the made up imaginary mobs are the aggressive ones.
Yeah. And
then all the passive ones are like existing animals. I would be okay with them adding a passive, you know, flying mob. That would be as cute as a bee and potentially useful. Like maybe you could plant it, maybe you could breed it, maybe it has other capabilities. I really don't know. Maybe it drops a new item. There's all kinds of different stuff that you could do. But in that light, you could also add something that would be the size of a bee that could be an aggressive mob. Like maybe it's not a flying turnip from a Ghibli. What's it? Studio Ghibli?
Ghibli, yeah.
I can't believe I screwed that up. But like not something that looks like it's from a Studio Ghibli movie, but something that looks a little bit more aggressive, and might become a problem. Like imagine if Endermites had wings, like that kind of stuff would be
the second stage evolution of Endermites. I feel like we already have stuff like Vexes, but you see them so rarely outside of raids and within mansions.
Yeah,
and
that could be a thing. Like if an Endermite is left. Not if you don't deal with it right away, maybe it cocoons and turns into something else. I don't know.
Oh gosh, yeah. That could have some depth to it for sure. Yeah. One more thing before we move on from bees. Corey Cheviak, who is one of the devs, Kojo Max, tweeted after the bees were released and pointing out that every tweet he had posted for the last 6 weeks had intentionally been started with the letter B. And that every time they mentioned a changelog recently, like a fix for 1.14.4, for example, he's responded with some variation on talking about bugs. He's been like, bugs? There are bugs? and he's been dropping, very, very subtle hints. In terms of hints, he's playing chess.
Yeah.
And the rest of us are playing checkers. Like it's
subtle.
It's like he's on a slightly different level, but of course he couldn't give too much away. It's just one of those things that, like, after the fact, as you look back and you go, oh, so that's what you were doing. Kind of like the when you find out the twist and then you go back and watch the movie and everything looks different. Is how he's playing it, which is cool. And I imagine he's been one of the people who's been primarily responsible for bees. And well done, Corey. You've nailed it. Is what I want to say. You gave us brown mushrooms and now you give us bees. I think you're doing well.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you for the fantastic discussion on bees and passive flying mobs in the game. I'm with you. I think that bees are very well done. I'm looking forward to having them in the game. What is your topic this week?
I wanted to keep this relatively short, but I was wondering, considering we're moving forward into 1.15 snapshots at this point, and there's a lot of debate about features that should be added and things that we have room for growth in, I was wondering if there's anything that really feels done about Minecraft. Because, we talk about this and things being fixed all the time and remedial things being done to the game, but I wonder if there are any features, large or small, that we can think of as complete and rely upon to remain the same forever. Or alternatively, is that kind of the point? Do we play this game not only because it has virtually endless worlds and boundless creativity, but also it has a near infinite capacity for things to change, and is the change part of the exciting side of things? This is a bit of a weird philosophical thing to jump to from a very concrete, like, we have this feature now, let's talk about it. But here's some stuff that I don't think is ever really going to change. For a start, crafting. We've got a 2x2 interface with a player. We've got a 3x3 for a crafting table. I don't see them really adding much else in the way of, like, changes to the crafting table. We've had new features like the recipe book, which add to the crafting experience without fundamentally changing it. The thing that I think can change about crafting is where items are crafted, like the loom being required to decorate banners. But there is stuff about Minecraft that I feel like is iconic now that really can't be changed all that much. And I think crafting is one of those elements. Would you agree with that? Do you ever see crafting kind of going in a completely different direction or splitting out even more than it already is?
No, I think the core of it is definitely staying and works. Like it absolutely works. I had to craft a lot of stuff over the weekend with those furnaces working on that fortress farm. That crafting book is a game changer. Game changer when you have to do stuff like that fast on the fly while talking
pistons.
To the stream.
It's revolutionized the way I make pistons, observers, all of that stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't even know the recipe for a blast furnace. I had to look it up, but I looked it up in game. I looked it up without going to the wiki. Like that to me was super important. But that's additive. That didn't change the way that you could craft it. If you knew what you wanted and you knew how to craft it, I still craft stairs the old-fashioned way. I don't like look for stairs, in the crafting in the recipe book. So yeah, I would agree. I think crafting is definitely sticking the way it is. I would not put it past them to add more crafting blocks. I'm not necessarily going to say that they're going to be profession blocks, but I could see other other blocks like the loom or other things kind of coming into the game down the line, but that's just pure speculation.
Yeah, the next couple are going to be a little bit more controversial. I'm just going to throw out a couple of examples of things that I feel like maybe going along the same lines of it being more iconic, that they can't really change it now even if they wanted to. And I think ores is one of these things, or at least the materials that we currently use to make tools and armor. Iron, gold, leather, and diamond, and I guess chainmail, if you want to count chainmail. Players often suggest adding new ores to the game, and it always feels like a bit of a no-brainer to some people, especially when so many mods are out there having like copper and tin and stuff, and all of that is used for various things within the mod, whether it be copper wiring in like an industrial craft style thing, or if it's just there to provide an extra tier of armor either between iron and diamond, or even more powerful than diamond. I feel like the current system for vanilla Minecraft is so... I'm not going to say balanced because it heavily favors diamond, but is kind of so ingrained in the gameplay loop that even if they wanted to, they couldn't really change the status quo. Adding something that was like a higher tier than diamond would be really, really strange at this point. And I think while some mods and stuff add more powerful enemies so that you need something that's more powerful than diamond, I really feel like the vanilla game is now balanced around the armor more so than the armor is balanced around the mobs. So I really don't see them adding more ores in the context of having them be used to make more tools. Those sort of feel like they are too much part of the experience. And I actually watched a video by a guy called White Light, who made a video called A Serious Critique of Minecraft, a little while ago, and I think I mentioned this on the show before, maybe in the pre-show or something, if not in the actual main show, but one of the few points that I thought he made really well, because some of his stuff was, I don't know, a little bit missing the mark for a player like me, somebody who plays Minecraft a whole bunch and gets into the mechanics and stuff. One of the things he said was that they really can't add ores now because like the rarity of diamonds would be compromised, and the fact that finding a diamond in Minecraft is still such a special experience, and it's enticing for people, and they can't be farmed in any way, so it's super rare, and yet they are still required for some of the most powerful weapons and armor and stuff in the game. It kind of hamstrings them a little bit in terms of adding more materials that could be used to make that kind of stuff, but it's also so integral to the Minecraft experience. The iconography is there already, and people don't want it to change as much as they think they do.
Oh,
How do you feel about that?
I will argue blue in the face on this one.
Yeah?
I think a really good example to draw a comparison would be Ender Pearls and Elytra. People thought Ender Pearls were the best, and then Elytra came out, and everybody's like, nope, I'm good with these. Ender Pearls are still useful. I still carry them. I still use them all the time. But Elytra one-upped the Ender Pearl as a way of getting around. And I feel like if they did decide, I'm going to throw out something like ruby armor just for fun to have a different color to talk about. If they decided to add rubies that could be made into ruby armor into the game, and then all of a sudden everybody was focused on walking around in bright red armor, I think it would just fold itself into the world, because I don't find diamonds exciting. I've had more diamonds than I know what to do with forever. I don't mind them. I find them by chance and I put them away, and I just don't use them because I have enough mending gear and I have enough stuff that I've not dug into utilizing the diamonds. So I don't find them exciting. I don't find an experience exciting. But I think that the focus on ores and armor tends to come from the PvP crowd. Whereas what I see with in terms of stuff in between, say, iron and diamonds and stuff like that, would not be so much for armor. Well, sure, it could add some aesthetics and stuff. It could also add to some crafting. Like, what would it not be cooler to have diamond armor with like an iron trim or a copper color? Like, just
I'm all for
like that.
Combining stuff like that for aesthetic purposes, definitely.
But when I think about iron and copper and stuff like that, what I would want to have in the game is metal blocks. So I'm thinking, with blast furnaces being essentially useless because they don't, in terms of what they do. If they added more ores that could then utilize the blast furnace and then craft more blocks with more textures, giving players that want to build modern cities and stuff like that, something that a lot of buildings have, which is metal, that they don't have in the game right now, outside of iron blocks, which don't really work with the texture that they have, could be very, very cool. I think that could add just a lot to the game in terms of color, in terms of textures, in terms of, new building blocks and a new feel overall. You could finally encourage a lot more builds that are not medieval. Like, I just find that so much of Minecraft is the cobblestone logs and medieval builds, which is fine. I like my fantasy stuff as much as the next person. But I'm wondering if new ores could open the door for new blocks, not necessarily just new weapons. Because like you said, everybody is so honed in on diamond, and diamonds are something that if you know what you're doing, you can get them day one, right? Like it does not take very long to get them. And to me, in terms of a player progression, I feel like you're right. Ores would be a waste of time. I do, however, from a creative standpoint, think that ores from a new block perspective and new material perspective could be very, very interesting.
I'll definitely take the creative argument there for sure, because new blocks and stuff, that's adding to the existing palette of stuff we already have and enhancing it in a way by its presence. Whereas I feel like the Elytra Enderpearl example is a little bit different because they are used for different things. They're both for transport, but Elytra is long distance and Enderpearl's a short distance. Mm-hmm. And you don't really have, like, maybe if the ability to swap armor around was made slightly faster somehow, I'm not quite sure how, but maybe if you had, like, you had armor in your hand and you're already wearing armor, but then if you right-click the armor in your hand, you can just swap them over quickly, or something like that. Maybe that would work out a little bit better, but adding an extra tier of armor, if it doesn't have any additional benefits other than just being, tougher against hard-hitting stuff and lasting longer, then what's the point in any of the stuff in between at that stage? That's my thing. It's like everybody just skips over diamond to get to whatever the higher tier thing is. And if it doesn't provide some sort of different benefit, then I feel like it's kind of, there's no point in the middle ground anymore. Well, maybe everyone's just going to go for the most efficient and the most effective thing.
Maybe the thing there to do is not to supersede diamond, but to be parallel with it and add, say, like ruby armor that is like super high fire resistance, or emerald armor being poison resistant or something like that. Maybe take a page from the kind of stuff you see in dungeon crawlers where it's the same armor rating, but it's going to be better against some enemies and or some environments than not.
Yeah, maybe. And that's where they've kind of shot themselves in the foot with the enchantment system already. Mm-hmm. I feel like the attempt they had at that recently was the turtle shell helmet, which gives you water breathing for 10 seconds and nobody uses it because they want water breathing for much longer, because guess what? It takes more than 10 seconds to swim around an ocean. So I feel like maybe the turtle shell helmet was them floating that stuff out, and obviously integrating it into turtles as a feature was kind of cool, but I don't feel like that was a particular success in terms of satisfying the player's craving for more stuff and delivering something that had some depth to it. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I like the idea of ores being included as an additional block, or maybe crafted into some other items. Last of all, biomes. I honestly think, much as I hate to say it, that they might be calling it quits on developing new biomes and only adding variants on existing biomes. We've seen it happen already with changes to the tiger biome, which we voted on. They've got a bamboo forest that's part of a jungle now, but is very much integrated into the jungle biome environment. Maybe once they add palm trees and stuff to the desert, we'll see a desert oasis. But every time I look at that adventuring time advancement and it's got a few extra biomes in it and I think, oh, what are those? It's always like variants on an ocean, variants on like jungle hills M or whatever. There's all of these different subcategories. They've changed all of the Badlands stuff now, so it's mesa plateaus and shattered Badlands and that kind of stuff. And I feel like they're probably done adding whole new biomes, like a forest with cherry blossom trees instead kind of thing, and having like a specific cherry forest biome. I kind of feel like they might be done doing stuff like that. And I'm fully waiting to be proved wrong here. If this next update is going to be about the natural world and it turns out that there's some more biomes coming, great. I am happy to take the egg on my face at that stage. But I do kind of wonder, aside from having like underground biomes that might change up cave generation a little bit, I sort of wonder if biomes are done.
Yeah, I don't want them to be, but I think that I think that it because they've talked about improving the existing biomes and it's taking them so long to do it, that if there are any new biomes, they're a long way out. Would be my guess.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, because ultimately this game is going through a continuous development cycle, all of this stuff could be open to change, but there's a point at which they have to sort of draw the line. And while Minecraft may never be done, I think it's still got to reach a point at which equilibrium has been met and there isn't really anything new to add that's going to detract from the existing player experience or kind of ruin the balance of stuff that they've already done. And that may be something that shakes up Minecraft in future. You know, World of Warcraft had Cataclysm. Like, we're changing the entire landscape of the game for you guys. So stranger things can happen. But I'm kind of wondering if anybody else has some thoughts about this. By the way, feel free to email us because I would love to hear people's thoughts about it. If anything about the game is finished and is never going to change and that's it, let me know. Let me know. I would love to hear about it. But with that challenge issued to you, that is going to be it for this episode of The Spawn Chunks. Thank you so much for listening. You can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get some value out of the show, why not consider putting some value back in? You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community, where pledging at any level will get you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat and get us closer to hitting our next goal of reinstating the Chunk Mail Dispenser segment. We are super close right now. We're currently at 112 patrons. We're only a few bucks away, so pitch in if you feel like you can. And special thanks to our content engineers. We have a new one to add to the list this week. Cameron Sigelsi, JD Williamson, Llamas, and Yates. Thank you so much for your support on this episode.
Spreading the word about the podcast is the easiest way to support the show. Just tell your friends. You can find us at The Spun Chunks on Twitter and Instagram. But a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the show. I would recommend poking a friend in the arm. Not too hard, but hard enough. You can email the show at thespawnchunks@gmail.com. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube as well. And what's the other one? I think it's
Android.
Yeah, I knew there was more. We're everywhere. It's really easy to find us.
We're all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, Google The Spawn Chunks. We show up immediately. It's quite easy. We're also rising the ranks on iTunes. And thank you to everyone that has left a 5-star review. Most of them recently have just been empty. So they've just been ratings and reviews and just the 5 stars. So we really, really appreciate it. It's helping us show up in more podcast feeds. And that's always a good thing. The RSS feed is linked at thespawnchunks.com. And the patron-only RSS feed is on the Patreon page, and that is where you can listen to the render distance, the extended version of the podcast.
My name is Pixel Riffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/pixelriffs, but this week I'm going to point you towards Twitch, where this Saturday I'm going to be teaching my wife to play Minecraft, and we're also going to be taking donations in support of the Estrella Foundation. You can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/pixelriffs to find me there, and you can check Twitter at pixelriffs for more details about when we're going to go live. It's going to be sometime on Saturday, but we still need to figure out the details. But yeah, more info to come on that. Joel, where can people find you online?
Everything that I am doing online is at joelduggan.com. If you're interested in hiring me, then just drop me a line there. You can find my illustration portfolio, my design portfolio, and links to other things like the Citadel Cafe, the podcast that I do with other friends. We talk about sci-fi and geeky entertainment. You can also follow me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram with just my name. I am super easy to find. I'm going to point you towards Twitch because that is where I'm having a lot of fun building farm fortress stuff.
Thanks for visiting The Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite, and according to all known laws of aviation, there is no way that a bee should be able to fly.